Hi investors, it's Tom here, your local Manchester guy, and we are here with Niraj again, our HMO expert from Luxury Hub. Hi Niraj.
Hi Tom, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for being here again. We couldn't meet in person this time, but we managed to catch Niraj on a Zoom call. So last time we spoke a little bit on the basics of HMO. And as you know, Niraj has more than 20 years experience on HMOs. So he knows quite a bit.
25, Tom.
25 years. So he's been doing it for 25 years. He's met a lot of investors and he's seen what can go wrong and what mistakes sometimes people do when they get into HMOs. So we don't want that to happen to any of you investors. So I think, Niraj, can you tell us in your experience, what are the mistakes that people tend to do when they start investing in HMOs?
Oh my God, how long have we got?
And let's do it in 5 minutes. So
Not
give me
2 hours.
the top five
Okay,
mistakes.
top five.
In
I'm
a
glad
minute
you said
each.
that. So what I'll do is I'll kind of like group them into the top five. Should be the top 50, but I will group the top 50 into five. It's amazing the way we do this on without any rehearsal. Okay, top five. So I would say first one is lack of understanding or knowledge about HMOs. Now that probably sounds obvious, but you know, I think the first mistake is not actually getting involved in learning about HMOs. You know, there's so many myths that people have that this won't work or that won't work, and people get very confused, you know, and then someone who has bought an HMO with very, very bad experience will say, oh, don't do HMOs. So I think that is the first one. And, you know, people think, you know, they've got to manage the properties themselves or they've got to do single lets first. But, you know, the thing is, you've got to learn how to do it properly. I think that's the point that I'm making. You know, you get such a small return from a single let compared to an HMO, you should learn to do it properly. I mean, I don't manage my properties myself, even though we have the Luxury Hub property management business with the team. You know, I'm essentially, even for me, paying for the team to do it for me. So I don't have that full-time job. And that's the reason I say that. So people think, oh my God, it's going to take so much time to manage. So I think that the first mistake is lack of understanding, lack of knowledge, and thinking that you can't do HMOs. So I think, you know, if you looked at that as the first mistake, that kind of like summarizes a lot of mistakes within it. So it's basically, mistake is not doing any research at all, or not understanding
not knowing what you're doing.
Yeah. Does that kind of make sense? You got any questions on that? Or
yes, that makes sense. Going into an investment, you should have some knowledge and know what you're doing.
Yeah,
I think that makes sense. Yes.
Yeah, and then the second one is kind of like related, at not doing sufficient research before purchasing. So, you know, these are the things that we do normally: local market conditions, not understanding the compliance and licensing requirements. I had one landlord who bought a property that was an HMO, and then they came to me and said, could you manage this for me? And they bought it in an Article 4 area that required a select license. Now, we solved the problem for them. You know, we had to apply and we had to, you know, explain, but they literally bought this property without any research. And
well, Article 4, maybe that's something we'll do another video about.
Yeah, we'll do another day, but basically they didn't meet the compliance requirement of that area. So, you know, that's an example. Local market conditions include stuff like that. You know, what's the potential tenant demand? You know, what's the right location? You know, they make the mistake of not looking at the right location, you know, that has high in demand. The great thing about Luxury Hub, because we manage other people's properties and we get tenants contacting us all the time, we know where the high in demand areas are, because tenants are saying, have you got a room here? We'd like that quality of property. You know, other things I would say in your research is transport links. You know, one of the KPIs, and by that I mean key indicator, is what's the walk score in the area. So access, does someone have to, can they walk to get everything they want, and how good are the transport links? So that all comes under sufficient research. you know, on an in-demand property.
It's different for HMOs than single lets, so where a single let works, an HMO might not.
Yeah,
it's very important to know where they work. Yes.
Yeah. And then moving on, I would think the next one is underestimating costs, both the purchase costs, if they're doing a refurbishment, and the operating costs. And, you know, a lot of people will look at our costs and go, wow, that's expensive. But we don't get it wrong. If we give a budget for an HMO in terms of costs, we always come in or under budget. And that's really, really important. So when you're doing your renovation costs on day one, you've got to make sure that you take care of the important things. You know, the mistake that people make when they're underestimating costs, they'll say, oh, I won't check the electrics, or I won't check the plumbing. And instead of drip feeding, instead of paying £5,000 on day one for the plumbing, for example, they might pay that over 5 years. And that £5,000 over 5 years could end up costing them £20,000. Why? Every time a call out, you know, there's £100 plus the accelerated wear and tear. So, you know, do it once, do it properly is my motto. And then I would say, you know, the ongoing repair costs are less, but also, you know, they underestimate the compliance costs, but also operating utility costs. So one thing that we did when we looked, you got me to look at a couple of HMOs, and, you know, I was saying, why are your budgets so high? You know, we fix the electric costs because we group buy with utility companies. We have these contracts where we get in the kilowatt per hour, or just call it the kilowatt unit cost up, you know, less than 50%. You know, I can give you examples of that where a landlord's bought, and, you know, they've come out, or they've wanted to come out because the electricity cost, it's not actually that high if you understand the market and you understand how to fix that cost, even in the current environment.
Yeah, this is important because, as we all know now, HMOs, the landlord has to pay the bills. So
yeah,
you have to account that. Yes.
Yeah. And, you know, we can go into that in another way. You know, we're looking at PV solar. We're doing some trials now. We know what the number of units are, and we're doing some analysis on that for a couple of projects, which is quite exciting.
That's interesting.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so this one.
Give us one last one.
Okay, I'd like to give you two more, and I'll keep this one simple because this is a nightmare, and it's very specific. Mixing different types of tenants. Oh my God! So there's only 4 types of tenants in an HMO. Students. Everyone thinks all HMOs are students. Professionals. So that's young professionals, people who've graduated, doctors, dentists, accountants. You call them blue collar workers in the UK. Third one would be working people. So that's, you know, people who are, you know, work in factories, or they might work in coffee shops. It's slightly lower earners. And then the fourth one is people who are on housing benefit, social security, family credit. I never do the fourth type. That's just something I stay away from. I do in single lets. So the biggest is mixing the four, or not tailoring your property for each of the 4 markets. You know, here's horror stories. Oh, students don't work, or professionals don't work. They don't know how to manage that type of profile.
Tell us the problem quickly, mixing the tenant types.
Well, if you imagine, if you have a student who students don't get up till 1 or 2 in the afternoon, you know, that's what they do, and they make a mess. They never tidy up. Whereas professionals are very early. They go to bed at a good time. You know, whereas your students are up till 2 or 3 partying. Can you imagine that? Living next door to each other in a house, having their friends over, or, you know, the working people, all very, very different types of profile.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And, you know, I can tell you some interesting ways to manage them, but maybe in another call. And then I would say the last one, which is another important one, is just doing an average HMO development is the worst thing. You know, if you do an average HMO, people are going to move out because you're going to have, and then you're going to have higher voids. So what do I mean by that? So professionals, for example, power showers. Doesn't cost a lot to put a really powerful shower in. Ensuite rooms is an obvious one. Memory foam mattresses, doesn't cost a lot of money. Really good soundproofing, you know, offer a cleaning service or clean communal areas. Have a separate washer dryer without a coin slot operation in it. You know, simple things. And if you've got really good functional benefits, you've got everything that they need for the long term, they won't move out. You know, you look at it, tenants will move out for something as simple as The bed's not comfy. If you imagine you, Tom, you're staying in a hotel for a year and the bed is not comfy, you're going to move out.
Yes.
You're going to say, I want another room.
I stayed 10 days recently in the hotel and the bed wasn't comfortable, and it is a pain, yeah. So imagine for longer.
Yeah, so that's a couple of specific ones and a few general ones. I would say those are the top 5 mistakes.
Good. We could go in depth into all of them, but I think that gives people a good sort of overview of things they need to watch out for. And of course, we are here to help them with that. So thank you for going through these. Just to summarize, tell us quickly the five things to watch.
Let's work backwards. Doing an average property development, average product, as we call it.
So that means not making it
above average. Yeah. Mixing tenants.
Yeah.
Underestimating costs, both initial and operational. Not doing enough research on the property, and where we know that automatically, really. And then just lack of understanding and fear, I would say, limiting beliefs about, oh my God, I can't do an HMO.
Interesting. So even though those are problems, they can all be fixed with the right knowledge and research.
Oh, of course, yeah. And make great returns, which is all about good cash on cash return.
Perfect. So I think, okay, we're going to end it here because we want to keep these ones short. Hopefully we're going to get you again for another video, and maybe we could go over risks with HMOs, because that
sounds like a good one.
So
you're going to give me a chance to prepare something this time?
Yes, prepare some risks, maybe 10 risks. Obviously, investors, they put in a lot of money. They want to know, they know there's going to be risks, and they want to know that what are they and how are they managed.
Yeah.
So we could go over top 10 risks of HMOs.
Perfect. Brilliant.
Perfect.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay, Niraj, thank you very much for your time. And investors, we'll see you on the next video. Bye for now.
Cheers. Bye.